Today we're starting in Puerto Iguazú, Argentina, but the whole point of this video is Paraguay. We're taking a car ferry across the Paraná River, getting stamped into the country, and heading to Ponte Falls, a huge waterfall that most Iguazu visitors never bother with. I'll show you what the border crossing looks like, what to watch for with your passport, and why having a local guide makes this trip way easier than trying to wing it. Keep watching because the waterfall payoff is real, and the route back involves a couple of surprises you'll want to be ready for. Before we jump in, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got a lot of new South America content up on the channel or coming soon. And if you want the full logistics for this day trip, including tour options and the exact trip I booked on Get Your Guide, scan the QR code on the screen or visit nowgoseeit.com. Today we're starting in Puerto Iguazú, Argentina. This town sits right at the intersection of two big rivers and the intersection of three countries. It's easy, normal, and widely popular to visit both the Argentina side and the Brazil side of Iguazu Falls. What's not nearly as common is taking a day trip into Paraguay. How can I pass up the chance to visit another country when it's basically sitting across the river waving at me? While I was digging around online for something that felt worth the effort, I discovered Ponte Falls. And no, this isn't the most famous waterfall in the area, but the photos made it look like it could be worth a visit, the kind of place that could be the highlight of a half-day trip to Paraguay. So I booked a tour on Get Your Guide. Heads up, there weren't a ton of tour options when I looked online. I list the options I found and the exact tour I took on the blog at nowgoseeit.com, or just scan the QR code on the screen. Here's the route I booked. We'd take a car ferry across the Paraná River into Paraguay, go to Ponte Falls, drive through Ciudad del Este, cross the Friendship Bridge into Brazil, then cross the bridge from Brazil back into Argentina, and end the day back at my hotel in Puerto Iguazú. If that sounds like a lot of borders for one half-day tour, it's because it is. And that's exactly why having a local guide for this is such a win. These crossings come with real requirements, and the last thing you want to do is be standing at a border booth having a I didn't know about that moment. A couple of important things before you go. First, Paraguay doesn't require a tourist visa for US citizens for short visits, but you still need your passport, and you still need to do immigration properly. Paraguay also requires proof of yellow fever vaccination if you're arriving from a country with yellow fever risk. Rules can depend on where you've been recently, not just your passport, so check before you go. Second, our route brings us into Brazil, briefly by land. Visa rules matter. For US citizens, Brazil requires a visa. It's good for 10 years, but it does cost $150 US. This is one of those details that can blow up your day if you ignore it, because the fact that you're just passing through is not an exception. Third, and I can't stress this one enough, when you leave Paraguay, make sure to get an exit stamp on your passport. Ask the guide exactly where and when to do it. This stamp is how they know you left the country. People skip it, then later they get hit with fines or they encounter problems if they ever try to enter Paraguay again. This is one of those 2 minutes now saves a nightmare later things. Okay, with that out of the way, I got picked up at my hotel in Puerto Iguazú and we drove to the boat dock for the car ferry. Before the big bridges were built, this ferry was basically how you got between countries from here. Now it's more of a niche move, but it still matters because there isn't a direct bridge between Argentina and Paraguay in this area. So the ferry is the only direct hop across the river. We got there about 20 minutes early, which is smart because once the ferry fills up, you're waiting for the next one. As we entered the dock area, we paid for the ticket. It's cash only. The ferry itself is no frills in the best way. It's basically an open-top floating parking lot. Cars pull on, and there's a row of metallic bench seating along one side for passengers. You can stay in your car if you like, but I grabbed a seat because if I'm crossing an international border by boat, I want to see it. We pushed off and crossed the Paraná River with views out toward the meeting point of the rivers and the triple border area. It's one of those spots that make you realize how weird border crossings are. Same water, different rules, different lines, different paperwork. On the ride, you get a great view of the new Paraguay-Brazil integration bridge. Here's the funny part, the bridge is completed, but it's not usable for normal crossings because the customs facilities and access roads aren't fully ready. It has started opening in phases for limited use, but for most normal travelers, access won't be available until later in 2026 or even 2027. So for now, the Friendship Bridge is our only way back, and it's still where the traffic stacks up. But more on that later. If you're visiting in the future, the new bridge is a big deal and might make the day trip to Ponte Falls more popular and convenient. On the Paraguay side, we docked and then headed to the world's most humble immigration setup. A small trailer on the side of the road doing immigration and customs through a window. Quick stamp, done. And just like that, Paraguay. New country checked. I'm easy to please. From there, we did a quick stop at the Three Borders landmark on the Paraguay side. It's an open park with a massive Paraguay flag and a monument, plus plenty of space to sit and look out over the river. You can see it clearly from the viewpoint back in Puerto Iguazú, so it's cool to visit there in person. It's a fast stop, but worth it for the I'm standing at a point where three countries meet factor. Then we hit the road to Ponte Falls. And here's the good news if you hate long drives. It's not far. The falls are in Presidente Franco, basically next to the Ciudad del Este, and it's a quick ride from the border area. We arrived at a small entrance area with a gift shop, and this is where you handle tickets. One thing to know, pricing can vary depending on where you're from, and there's also an optional panoramic elevator fee if you want the easiest way between viewpoints. There's also a cafeteria on site, bathrooms, and basic amenities. Then you head into the park on a paved trail through a landscaped area. You can hear the falls immediately. That sound starts early, and it just keeps getting louder until you round the corner and see the water. Quick history moment, because the name is part of the fun. The name comes from the Guarani language. Monday, spelled like Monday, the day of the week, but pronounced as Monday, means something like stolen river or water that steals. It comes from the Guarani word munda, meaning to steal or rob. It's a name that points to the river's rough reputation and what it meant to the Guarani people who lived with it long before we showed up with cameras. These falls are big. This is a wide, heavy wall of water dropping into a rocky basin. The falls are roughly 40 to 45 meters high, and the wider section clocks in around 120 meters, which helps explain why it looks so dramatic in person. There are multiple viewing areas, and the park layout lets you see it from above and lower down. The big accessibility win here is the panoramic elevator. It's built into the hillside so you can go between the upper and lower viewpoints without thinking, I'm going to regret these stairs on the way back up. You're basically riding down the cliffside next to the waterfall in an open elevator. It's a pretty cool ride. At the top, there's also a small cafe if you want a quick drink, a snack, and a break before moving on. And if you just come from Iguazu Falls, the other big difference hits you immediately, the crowd level. Iguazu is iconic and it draws people like a magnet. Monday Falls felt way more relaxed in comparison. You can take your photos, you can look around, you can exist as a person without feeling like you're in a theme park queue. I spent some time bouncing between viewpoints, watching the flow, and just taking in how much power is coming over that edge. Depending on the weather and rainfall, the volume can change a lot, so you get a very different experience depending on the time of year. Then it was time to head back toward Puerto Iguazú, and this is where the day turns into a border crossing reality show. We left the falls and started towards Ciudad del Este to cross into Brazil via the Friendship Bridge, and it becomes obvious very quickly why everyone is excited about the newer bridge taking pressure off this crossing. Traffic, just traffic. We crawled through Ciudad del Este in bumper-to-bumper traffic for about 2 hours. Ciudad del Este is one of the biggest shopping hubs in the region, and people come here to buy things like electronics, perfumes, and imported goods. A lot of visitors do this as a dedicated shopping run, and plenty of tours build in time for it. Prices here are much lower than across the border. I didn't add on shopping because for me it looked more utilitarian than fun. It's the kind of stop you do when you have a mission and a list, not when you're trying to have a great tourist day. But I totally get why people do it, especially if you're traveling from Brazil or Argentina and you want specific items at lower prices. The saving grace for this slow ride was the guide. He spoke perfect English and used to be a history teacher in Brazil. So instead of sitting in traffic silently spiraling, I got a running commentary on the region, the border dynamics, and the culture in this tri-border zone. If you're going to be stuck in a car for hours, having someone who can turn it into an informational deep dive makes a huge difference. Another great win for booking a tour instead of going it solo. When we finally got close to the border area, I hopped out to handle the Paraguay exit stamp. Again, do not skip this. Confirm and get stamped. Then we crawled onto the Friendship Bridge into Brazil, and once we cleared that crossing, the drive back toward Argentina was way smoother. We still had another border stop at the Brazil-Argentina crossing over the Ponte Tancredo Neves bridge, and that took about 20 minutes or so. But compared to the earlier crawl, it felt like nothing. And then we were back in Puerto Iguazú by mid-afternoon, passport now looking like it had a busy day. So, was it worth it? If your main goal is to see the most famous falls in the region, you already know the answer. Iguazu is the headline act. But if your goal is I'm in Puerto Iguazú and want to do something uncommon, get a Paraguay passport stamp, and see a massive waterfall that most people skip, Monday Falls delivers. The waterfall itself was a highlight, and it was cool to see a different side of the tri-border area beyond the standard Argentina and Brazil Iguazu routine. Just go into it knowing the truth. The falls are the fun part, and the border crossings are the price of admission. Having a guide makes the day way smoother, especially with paperwork and logistics. If this helped you plan your trip, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and scan the QR code to see our full blog post on nowgoseeit.com. It has the tour link, the route details, and tips that make the day easier. Now go see Monday Falls, Paraguay.